Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the world's largest and most successful hedge funds, is known for his deep understanding of economic cycles and market behavior. In his book Principles and his famous video, How the Economic Machine Works, Dalio distills complex economic concepts into a simple, understandable framework. His model is centered around understanding the three primary drivers of the economy: productivity growth, short-term debt cycles, and long-term debt cycles. Here are the key takeaways from Dalio's view on how the economic machine functions. 1. The economy is like a machine. Dalio explains that the economy operates like a machine, composed of many interacting parts. While it may seem chaotic at times, economic patterns repeat themselves in cycles and can be understood and anticipated with the right knowledge. At the core of Dalio's philosophy is the belief that economies are driven by the interactions of individuals, businesses, and governments as they make decisions related to spending, investing, and borrowing. 2. Productivity growth, the engine of economic growth. The foundation of any economy's growth is productivity growth. Productivity refers to the ability to produce more with the same amount of resources. It's driven by factors like technological advancements, innovation, improvements in education, and more efficient capital allocation. According to Dalio, productivity growth is what allows living standards to improve over time. Without productivity growth, economies can't expand sustainably in the long term. This is why Dalio emphasizes that the long-term health of an economy depends on technological innovation and improvements in how labor and capital are used. 3. The short-term debt cycle, business cycle. Dalio breaks down the economy into two main types of cycles: the short-term debt cycle and the long-term debt cycle. The short-term debt cycle, or business cycle, typically lasts 5 to 8 years. It's driven by the borrowing and lending behavior of individuals and businesses. When borrowers take on debt, they fuel economic activity, as they use the borrowed money to spend and invest. This creates an expansion phase, where more goods and services are produced, unemployment falls, and wages rise. However, borrowing eventually leads to higher levels of debt, and as debt levels rise, lenders become more cautious. This leads to a tightening of credit, higher interest rates, and a slowdown in economic activity, creating a recession. After a period of economic contraction, the cycle starts over again as borrowing picks up and the economy begins to expand once more. Dalio explains that understanding the short-term debt cycle is key for anticipating periods of boom and bust. Policymakers, especially central banks, use monetary policy, like adjusting interest rates, to smooth out the business cycle and prevent excessive booms or busts. 4. The long-term debt cycle. The long-term debt cycle is a much slower and longer process, typically spanning 50 to 75 years. It's driven by a gradual build-up of debt throughout an economy, which over time, exceeds the capacity to repay it. As debt builds up over decades, borrowers eventually face the reality that they can't continue borrowing at the same pace without causing major financial instability. Dalio explains that, in the long-term debt cycle, excessive borrowing eventually leads to a situation where debt becomes unsustainable. At this point, the economy faces a debt crisis, where countries and individuals can no longer service their debt without taking extreme measures. This can lead to defaults, restructuring, or in some cases, governments opting to inflate their way out of debt by printing more money, which can lead to inflationary pressures. The long-term debt cycle is where debt saturation becomes a critical issue. Dalio suggests that when an economy reaches this tipping point, policy responses like austerity, debt restructuring, or large-scale monetary intervention, such as quantitative easing, become necessary to reset the cycle. 5. The role of central banks. Dalio also highlights the role of central banks in managing the economic machine. Central banks, like the US Federal Reserve, influence both the short-term and long-term debt cycles by adjusting interest rates and using other monetary tools to regulate the flow of credit in the economy. By lowering interest rates, central banks encourage borrowing and spending, which can stimulate the economy during a downturn. Conversely, raising interest rates can help cool down an overheating economy and prevent excessive debt accumulation. Central banks also play a crucial role in managing inflation, which becomes particularly important during times of crisis or when there is an oversupply of money. Dalio believes that central banks can smooth out the ups and downs of the economy, but they can't eliminate economic cycles entirely. they can only mitigate their severity. 6. The importance of understanding economic cycles. Dalio's core message is that understanding the economic machine is critical for navigating markets and personal finance. By recognizing where we are in the short-term and long-term debt cycles, individuals and policymakers can make better decisions to prepare for potential downturns or capitalize on opportunities during periods of growth. He also stresses that economic cycles are inevitable, and while their timing can be hard to predict, the general pattern is consistent. This understanding allows people to plan better, avoid pitfalls, and make smarter investment decisions. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a comment. I'd love to learn from you all and hear your thoughts.